So Tale of the Bluebird is there's a story within a story. It's framed in a detective story. I'm still deaf in this ear, and it feels really weird listening to yourself. But anyway, so I'm going to read a little bit in the voice of, it's told in two voices. One in the first person, which is a hunter in the village where the remains are in the book, and the other in third person from the point of view of a forensic scientist who's asked to go in and investigate this these remains. So I'm reading third person. Kayo parked his car under the mango tree to the left of his parents' compound and walked towards the square of light emerging from the mosquito netting on the top half of the outer door. He could tell by the smoldering coals on the coal pot to the left of the door that his mother had just finished cooking. A thin line of steam from the water she used to douse the fire still hung in the air like an unanchored umbilical cord. As he opened the door, he heard his mother's voice from the dining room. "My son, the doctor, have you come?" His mother greeted him in a peremptory, before switching to Ga so his father wouldn't feel left out. "Okay, your son is home." She raised her voice slightly so her husband would hear her over the drums that signaled that the 7 o'clock news was about to begin on TV. Kayo stooped to hug his mother and felt her rubbing his back as if he was still a boy. "Pedro," his father boomed, "you are early today, so you can eat with us." "Yes, father," Kayo answered as he walked out of the dining room and continued down the corridor towards the source of his father's voice. "Let me go and change my clothes." He undid the remaining buttons on his shirt and nodded in his father's direction when he reached the living room door. His father looked up from the news and smiled. His legs were stretched in front of him and his bare feet were propped on a sheepskin cushion from Bogatanga. He nodded back at Kayo and said, "There is no greater joy for a man than to sit and eat with his son as a man," and laughed, his square teeth glinting in the TV's light. Kayo smiled, shook his head, and continued down the corridor. He wanted to stop and sit with his father, but he was tired and frustrated. He didn't want to burden his father with the knowledge that all was not well with him. It was better to smile and walk past, leaving his parents with the small joy they felt, knowing their son was a doctor. He still hadn't been able to explain what his profession was. Things had been like that for a while. Ever since Kayo started boarding school, there were parts of his life he couldn't share. He understood them, but they didn't understand him. It was lonely, incredibly so. With his sister and brother both away from home, Kayo was now the only child in the house, and with that came extra attention. He sometimes got the feeling that his parents didn't feel fulfilled without their children. The Odampton home was divided down the middle by a corridor, which ran from the front door to another door at the back, leading to quarters in the rear where Kayo lived. The path from the front to the back door had been the dividing strip between his father's house and his grandfather's house. After his grandfather died, the two houses were gradually built into one as the family expanded. Growing up, Kayo loved to trace his fingers along the hidden lines where the walls had been broken or built to join the two houses. His room was unadorned, the right wall crammed with shelves and books, with a portable stereo on the central shelf. There was a sink at the end of the closest wall to the door, below which was a cane basket. Kayo threw his shirt into the basket and watched its pale yellow intensity disappear like daylight. He walked to his bed on the left side of the room, took his shoes off by stepping on the insoles, loosened his belt, and wriggled out of his trousers. He lay back on the bed with a sigh, his still socked feet flat on the dark blue linoleum floor. The remote control for the stereo lay by his thigh, and he reached for it. He pressed the power button, and Kojo Intree's voice seeped into the room. Within minutes, Kayo was asleep. He was startled awake by a series of heavy knocks on his door. "Yes? Kojo?" His father's voice had a hint of concern in it. "Why? Are you having a baby in there? Come and eat." "I'm coming, father. I'm coming." And then this is the next one. Kayo started his car before he noticed the crack in his windscreen. It ran from the top left edge of the glass halfway down towards the base of his wipers, as though on a journey it had never finished. He got out and walked around the car. There was no other sign of damage. It was obvious what had happened. With the mangoes on their tree in season, the dark green maze of the tree's leaves had become a beacon to all the children in Yamashi. Since the Odampton house was without walls, there was no stopping ardent boys from attacking the ripe orange fruits with missiles. A wayward stone must have landed on his car. Kayo shrugged and walked back to the driver's side. This was not a place where insurance would cover him. Besides, it was a small blemish. The car was for driving, not for show. Having spent the night agonizing over his missed opportunity with the police, he had finally decided he was better off staying at Akwabayo. If the police really wanted him, they would have to process his job application and offer him an actual job, not some random unclassified case. Yes, he wanted to work as a forensic scientist, but not on a one-off case that would lead nowhere. He was more concerned about the systemic approach of the police. Forensics should be a key part of law enforcement. Regardless, he found himself cringing at the thought of all the evidence taken away at the scene of crime. He shrugged again as he eased into the car. As he did so, he spotted the ripe mango by his trailing left foot and bent to pick it up. He smiled. It wasn't such a bad day after all. The engine responded as soon as he turned the key and reversed onto the dusty road beside their home that ran 50 meters towards the sea where the coast road began. Kayo liked to use the coast road in the morning. It made him feel connected to his family. His father went out to sea after Kayo went to bed and returned to land in the morning with the catch of the day. Kayo's mother and the other fish sellers waited on shore for the fishermen to pull their nets in, then got to work separating the fish into species and sizes for sale. It was a familiar routine. During his school holidays, he used to go out with his mother early in the morning and help his father's team of fishermen pull their nets in. He remembered the chants the men sang, the way the sun rose slow, as though it was tied to the ends of the nets they were pulling in. And I'll end there.